Thank you all for being here today. This module is an overview module on communications. We actually have a lot of modules on communication and aspects of it, but this one is about the importance of effective communications. Why is that so important here?
Well, we teach in a collaborative environment.
Yes.
It's hard to collaborate if you don't communicate,
Right.
and it's even harder if you communicate ineffectively.
Did you before you came here, did you think you were a good communicator?
I thought I was a decent communicator before I came here, but I also come from a traditional background
Yeah.
that thinks of communication as different. Communication in a traditional background is the passing on of information.
Yes.
Doesn't require a response.
Yeah.
I am the lead teacher, so this is how it's going to be handed down to you. And so the communication that you have is just in an effort to understand what you've been told, not necessarily an effort to provide information, provide input, have that input analyzed and looked at by the whole team, and come up with a consensus that works for everybody.
Right. And I've learned it's easier to miscommunicate than to communicate well.
Right.
Because there's so many voices, right? And sometimes what we think is mixed messaging is all in the nuance and the words chosen. And if we don't learn to ask good questions here, you don't do well here.
And to listen, because I've been in groups where people have been saying the same thing,
Yes.
but they're not listening to each other.
Right.
So you're, as a person that's looking on, you're like, but you're saying the same things. But they're just, because they're not using the same words and they don't have the same emphasis on the words they're using, then they think they're in conflict.
Well, actually, Deborah and I had a 15-minute conversation on just this morning, because what my premise is, when I don't have my listening ears on, I can't ask good questions. When I don't have my listening ears on is when I have an agenda and a script in my mind of what I
Already,
want to
yes.
say. Right?
What you
quit
already know your
listening.
answer is going to be.
Right. It's hard to ask questions or listen
Yeah.
if you're thinking about what you're going to say.
And if you're defensive and you're just, you're not listening to what the person is saying, you're just looking for a way to overrule them.
Yes.
So you're looking in their words of something you don't agree with, and that's all you're looking
Yeah,
for.
and then you redirect the conversation based on that
Right.
instead of what the
I never
message
do that.
intended.
I do it with my child all the time.
Exactly. We all
Like
do
I'm just
it.
looking for
Right.
something for you to
Yeah.
say, for me to
So
say
that you-
no is
yeah.
no.
Right.
Right.
Speaking of listening, oftentimes we just want an audience for our monologue.
Right.
We really don't want to have a conversation and communicate. What we really want to do is to say what we need to say,
Yeah.
and
And
I
you to
need
say-
an audience to listen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are right. Communication, it is the most difficult thing in a collaborative environment because it isn't, like you said, it's not all going downhill, right?
Right.
And many voices can be heard, and it can cause mass confusion. And it has. And if you aren't disciplined in asking questions, clarifying, what do you mean by the use of this word in this case, you will filter a lot of stuff wrong.
And I think you also have to look at your own stuff as
Absolutely.
you're listening. And what do the words that the person is using in the group mean to me?
Right.
Because I think that we all come with our own stuff about, what words mean to them, what phrases mean, what actions mean. And instead of hearing that person, all you're hearing is what that means to you. So if you're speaking loudly and I interpret that as yelling,
Yes.
then instead of hearing what you're saying, I get caught up in how the yelling that I think you're doing is making me feel.
Right? Oh, absolutely nonverbal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a very funny but sad example of this earlier this year that's now the joke in the admin team. Last year, when the subschedule was being done, Laura, when our HR person, would put together a list of all the subs and their availability. And every week she would send it to Deborah, and Deborah would say back to her, I can't read your chart. And after the whole summer, or the end of the summer, Laura was really upset. And Deborah was really upset because Deborah couldn't read the chart. And Laura said to me one day, Paula, why can't she read a matrix? What is so hard about reading a matrix? I said, Laura, did you ever ask her what she meant when she said she couldn't read the chart? And Laura said, no. And I said, the font size is too small. So all
So what
summer.
Laura heard was,
Yes.
what do you mean my design is not working for you?
And what did Deborah hear? You don't respect me because I keep asking for larger
Right.
font
Yeah.
sizes.
Right.
And maybe never use the word font size.
She didn't.
Right?
Because I finally, when Deborah told me after about the fourth time, I said, Deborah, what do you mean you can't read it? She's like, look at this. Can you read this? And I'm like, yeah, actually I can. And she's like, I can't. And I'm like, oh, the font. So as soon as Laura knew that, she made the
She
chart
increased
bigger.
the font
Right.
size.
Right.
It
Right.
was over.
How many times a day do we do that?
All day long.
Yeah.
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 All day long. And that's why communication, this module is so important. Thank you.